Hello, and welcome to 5 Minutes with KeRusso. Today we are going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 48. And we're going to be talking about a rather difficult lesson that Jesus teaches us, but one that I believe is very important and very relevant to today. This country has become very divided in many different ways in the past several years, with lots of people disagreeing and arguing on lots of different topics. You have political topics, are you Democrat or are you Republican? You have gender topics, male or female, race topics, white or black. You have societal topics as a whole. Are you more liberal or are you more conservative? So many ways that people draw a line in the sand and say that if you are not on my side, if you don't agree with me, then we are too different to get along and we have to argue and disagree on everything. And in many ways, we have found ways to consider each other enemies, people who need to be silenced or stopped. Well, the Bible is very clear about how we are to treat each other and how we are to treat those that we consider to be our enemies. Matthew 5, verse 43 through 48. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. This is not an easy lesson. He's telling us to love those who disagree with us, those who have different political views, different race, different gender. It's very difficult to love those that we consider to be our enemies. It's much easier to fight. But Jesus is not asking us to do anything that he's not willing to do himself. Jesus had a lot of enemies during his time on earth. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the tax collectors, people who disagreed with him and argued with him on everything, people who tried to trick him into saying something he didn't mean, and eventually people who nailed him to a cross to die a very, very slow and painful death. And yet, as Jesus is hanging there on that cross, in, I'm sure, agony, what does he say about his enemies? He says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. He shows grace and mercy and compassion and love. He loves his enemies. And I wonder if that is because Jesus never really saw them as his enemies, as much as they saw themselves as his enemies. He never did. Jesus only ever saw Satan as the enemy. And I wonder how different this country would be if we followed that example that he's given us. If we saw each other not as enemies, but as brothers and sisters, as children of God. And if we showed mercy and compassion the way he did. It is very difficult to show compassion to those that you consider to be your enemy. But I believe it is also very difficult to consider someone your enemy if you are showing them compassion. And I believe that might be the real lesson that Jesus is trying to teach us. That if you show love, how can you consider someone your enemy? And isn't that just a better way to live? I know this is a very difficult lesson, but Jesus is willing to walk through that lesson with us. He has during his life on earth, and I believe he's willing to do so with us even today. Thank you for tuning in to 5 Minutes with KeRusso. Keep an eye out for more videos like this. Have a wonderful day, and God bless you.